If you're looking to lose belly fat and tap into fat burning mechanisms, you're probably wondering which foods will help you get there faster. I'm sharing 10 different foods that can help you to optimize that fat burning in today's video. Alright guys, if you're new to my channel and you don't know who I am, my name's Autumn and I'm a certified clinical nutritionist with my master's in nutrition human performance. On my channel, I'm typically talking about the science-backed and holistic methods that you can use in order to achieve your wellness dreams. So if you have a wellness goal in mind, make sure you subscribe. All right, so these 10 foods all really focus around the concept of reducing the insulin response. Insulin is our storing hormone. It's one of the most anabolic hormones, which is the storing hormone. It also actively shuts off fat burning, literally by the definition of insulin, for multiple hours after you've stimulated insulin. And it does this through a variety of effects. First of all, it stops something called lipolysis, which is the breakdown of fat as fuel. And if you're curious of how that actually works, how it can actually shut off fat burning, what happens is that insulin converts those free fatty acids that you can typically use for energy that are released from your fat cells into these larger triglycerides that are clunkier and therefore impossible to actually leave the fat cell. And if it can't leave the fat cell, then of course you can't use fat for fuel, and therefore insulin stops that burning of fat or that lipolysis. So because of this, not only does insulin stop fat burning, it also makes it so that you are actively storing fat as well by converting those free fatty acids that you can use for energy into those triglycerides. This is also why it's typically common to see high triglyceride levels with a higher carbohydrate diet, typically because insulin does convert those free fatty acids into triglycerides. And the foods that I'm going to be covering today help to decrease that insulin response, therefore make it so those free fatty acids can be released from the fat cell and actually used as an energy source. And when it comes to fat burning, that's the definition of what we want. We want lipolysis. We want that fat burning. And in order to do that, we need to be able to free up those free fatty acids in order to be used as fuel. And we can't do that when insulin is high. So these foods are really focusing on decreasing the insulin response in order to free up that fat burning. These foods also focus on increasing satiety, that feeling of fullness or satisfaction, because when you have that decreased satiety, that increases hunger, and therefore that also increases the cravings for the types of foods that won't help to serve your goals. And typically these types of foods also have the biggest impact on insulin. So if you think of foods that typically are craved, like sugar, chips, crackers, candies, all of those will have a really big impact on insulin. So we really want to focus on satiety in order to help to reduce those cravings. Okay, so let's jump into the 10 different foods to help you burn fat as fuel. The first one, eggs. Eggs are one of my favorite types of protein sources because first of all, it's fairly inexpensive, but it also contains a good amount of both the satiating factors, which is protein and fat, while having a fairly low, if non-existent amount of carbohydrates that stimulate insulin. Now, protein does lightly stimulate insulin, but not nearly to the effect of carbohydrates. In fact, protein helps to stimulate something called peptide YY, which helps to really increase that satiety at the hormonal level. And fat helps stimulate something called CCK or cholecystokinin, and that also acts on appetite suppression, aka satiety. So this combination is really great in eggs because it does contain a good amount of both while having that limited amount of carbohydrates that stimulate insulin. Lately, personally, I've been making egg scrambles for one of my lunches that I'll throw some vegetables in as well. I'll even throw some hard-boiled eggs on top of my salad as a protein source. Number 2. Chia seeds. Chia seeds are extremely rich in fiber as well as a pretty good source of protein and fat. And therefore, it's also a really great plant-based source of these proteins and fats. Now, we talk all the time about how fiber is important for satiety, and it is. But the thing that I want you to remember is that fiber acts on that short-term satiety, usually about 30 minutes within your meal. And it does that by acting on that stretch mechanism in your stomach so that it can tell your brain that you're full. But high amounts of fiber won't make you full for a long time. That's where protein and fat come into play. Protein and fat help to make it so you can go that 4 to 5 hours without having to eat because you have those really satiating compounds in play. This is why if you have a really big bowl of greens, you might be full for a little bit, but you're not really going to be full for very long. You're probably going to be hungry pretty soon. It's because you didn't include that protein and fat as well. And chia seeds has all 3 of these, so it's a really great food to incorporate in order to help boost satiety. In fact, I have a really amazing, very satiating chia brekkie bowl recipe that you guys can check out right here. All right, number 3. Olives. Now, olives are moderately high in that satiating fat, which of course, because that's where we get olive oil from. However, it doesn't have very much protein, but it also is fairly void in carbohydrates, which of course is great because that's going to help to decrease that insulin response further. Now, olives are kind of more of an add-on type of food. I wouldn't really consider it to be a main meal, especially because it is so void of protein, but it is a good way to get your fats up. Going back to that salad example, that would be a really great and easy way to add on some fat by incorporating olives. Number 4, avocado. A list of satiating foods would just simply not be complete unless avocado was included. Especially because, I'm here in LA, so I have to talk about avocados. Obviously, it's really trendy to use on everything, but it's kind of for a good reason. Avocado is fairly high in fat while also being a pretty good source of fiber too. So remember, to hit all those satiating points, protein, fat, and fiber are the key components that you want to focus on. And avocado helps to contribute to 2 of those. On Sundays, I really like making a big batch of my SoCal spicy guac from the 21-day intermittent fasting program, and I'll just keep a batch of that and I'll use it on top of the egg scramble I mentioned earlier, or on top of a salad, or even some cooked vegetables. It's a really great add-on to boost the fat content and therefore the satiety of your meal. Number 5. Nuts. Walnuts, cashews, pecans, almonds, really whatever it is that you prefer, as long as it's not sweetened and also roasted with those nasty oils that are going to be more inflammatory. And cashews get a bad reputation because they are going to be naturally a little bit higher in those carbohydrates than other nuts. However, compared to a lot of other foods that are higher in carbohydrates, it's still not going to be a massively significant amount of carbohydrates that'll spike your insulin levels. Granted, if you were following something like a keto diet, that's where it can be a little bit tricky with cashews because of those net grams of carbohydrates, but for increasing that satiety, making so that your body can reduce the insulin response, there's still a good option. And nuts in general are a really great source of fat as well as a moderate source of protein. And so it hits those 2 factors, those 2 main long-term satiety factors, to make sure that you are satiated for that 4 to 5 hours, especially when you add it onto a meal. If you guys follow me on Instagram, you've probably been seeing that lately I've been having a lot of this one chia brekkie bowl I've been making and adding on cashews to go along with it. But I also love throwing things like almond butter into my smoothies too. Number 6. High quality animal-based proteins. Chicken, turkey, beef, fish, lamb, all of these have a really great source, some of the most dense sources of protein that we can actually get from our diet, as well as a moderate amount of fat depending on the different protein you're choosing. And when it comes to any type of animal-based protein, or even fat for that matter, it's really important that you get the highest quality source. No antibiotics, no hormones, organic, grass-fed, grass-finished, pasture-raised even. And for that reason, lately I've actually been using ButcherBox. This is not a sponsored video at all, but it's something that I found is really convenient, helps to bring the cost down on making sure that I'm getting that really high quality protein source. So if you're looking to incorporate some of these higher quality animal-based proteins for some protein and fat, I definitely recommend checking out ButcherBox. I really like it. Again, not sponsored, I just legitimately use it and really like it. Number 7. Greek yogurt, or cottage cheese for that matter. Both of these foods have a really pretty significant amount of protein, and it's a whole protein source that'll keep you satiated long term. It's also very low in carbohydrates, which helps to keep the insulin response lower. So if you aren't sensitive to dairy, then this is a really good option. In fact, I've been using it as the protein source for my smoothies and also for my chia brekkie bowls to help make a complete protein source. It also helps to shift the reliance away from protein powders so that you don't have to have it for every single one of your meals in order to get enough protein. Number 8. Coconut cream or coconut butter. Now, this is a really great plant-based alternative for the fat component that you typically get from things like yogurt. And this is why you'll often see it as a really great fat source option in a lot of my different recipes, including the smoothies and the chia brekkie bowls. But if you are following a plant-based diet and you're using this instead of something like yogurt, it's really important to keep in mind that coconut cream or coconut butter is not going to really have much protein. So you need to make sure that you're compensating for this with either a protein powder or different types of nuts and seeds to help bring the protein content up. Number 9. Hard cheeses or aged cheeses. These include different types of cheeses like Parmesan or sharp cheddar. And what's really great about them is that they're extremely low in lactose, which is that milk sugar, while containing a pretty great amount of protein and fat. In fact, just 1 ounce of sharp cheddar has around 7 grams of protein and 10 grams of fat. So this is really going to help act on those satiety mechanisms to suppress those sugar cravings that you might get later on. It's also going to help to reduce that snacking in between meals, which also will help keep the insulin lower as a result. Now, if you like cheese, I don't think I really need to give you recommendations on how to add this in, but personally I've been adding it to the kind of Cobb salad, which is also from the Level Up guide, and occasionally I'll throw a couple slices on to go along with my egg scramble that I mentioned earlier. Number 10. Coconut flakes or coconut shreds, unsweetened. This is one of my favorite alternatives to that really high sugar, high insulin producing granola. These unsweetened dried shreds are essentially just the dried coconut meat. So for that reason, they're fairly high in fat and they provide a good crunch that helps to substitute for that granola that you might be used to. Especially if you're used to adding on granola to things like yogurt or to smoothie bowls, this is a really great lower insulin producing type of food that you can add on and still get that same crunch. Now, if you're wondering how you can implement these foods into your day or throughout your week, I have a really great grocery haul video where I also give 7 days of meal ideas right here. Also, if you're new to my channel and you love the science-backed information, make sure you subscribe right here. Come out with new videos every Tuesday and Thursday. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in my next video.